In what could be considered quite alarming for your local card store, Tops have come out and changed their terms and conditions that now dictate what you can and can't do with Tops product in your store. This impacts breaking, but also, the reporting and whether or not you're actually going to get access to Tops product as well. It's a pretty, concerning situation for some. A lot of people seem to think this has come out of nowhere. I'm going to talk through each of these things and then share my thoughts, as I always do. Now, this video is being recorded shortly after the news broke, but by the time you've seen this, a lot of other people probably would have talked about it. There's a few things in here that I know not many others are going to talk about, so just bear with me as we go through it. I think the first thing that's quite important to call out that a lot of people seem to be freaking out about is this thing we can see here from Sports Collectors Daily. And that is, they're defining now what you can and can't do with your Tops product. And they're essentially saying, in layman's terms, because they do clarify it, for clarity, products are for resale to direct consumers only. It has to be in a physical brick and mortar environment, and you can only sell the product in their original condition. They also then go on to say that, you can't sell online, which I think is a bit strange, and I'll get to that a little bit later. You need basically written, permission from them before you can do that. But then they also go on to define that you cannot break, unless the break is occurring in your card store. You can no longer do this online. And if you want to sell those spots to participants, the people that are participating in your group break also need to be located within your card store, which again is pretty concerning, but nothing overly surprising based on the things we've talked to, in the past on this channel. The other thing that's also quite interesting is that they're now saying that if you want to sell this Tops product moving forward, you need to have a specific location set up within your brick and mortar store that is dedicated to Tops, i.e. it has to be completely separated, from all the other, competition, similar to how you have, Coke and Pepsi be on separate shelves in a supermarket, as an example. Now, the thing about breaking that people are sort of freaking out about before we jump into the other concerns is, this is not surprising if you are a regular on this channel. I'm fairly certain we talked about this, as soon as when, Fanatics acquired Tops, and we talked about them potentially doing their own breaking platform. We've spoken about it 5 or 6 times and in various breaking videos, but something like that, is to be expected when they're looking to introduce something from Fanatics Live. When we've talked through issues in the past around breaking platforms, we talked through Whatnot, Pokemon Scam, only 3 or 4 days ago. This is a way for them to try and limit that and control that, right? So essentially they're going to say, like I've mentioned before, that if you want to buy Tops product and you want to be a breaker, you need to do very specific steps. Now, I don't think they're going to ban, stores completely from being able to break online and things like that. You're just going to need to go through, a proper approval process in order to, do that in the first place. They want to stop people from just buying a box online, using their platform, and then doing some scam and then making Tops look bad, right? This is essentially preempting, the damage control and the issues we've seen on Whatnot as an example over the last few months. I think, it is a good thing if it's handled correctly, right? If they do this the right way, it's not going to really change too much in the grand scheme of things. It's primarily going to be there just to prevent some hanky-panky going on. Because if you want to be a store and sell your product to someone that is going to break, and then that person gets caught as a scammer, you as a store are now going to be held somewhat liable from getting Tops product in the future, which I think, is a good thing. We need to have a bit more accountability on that process chain and make sure that, if somebody is selling something, they're doing things, the right way, and they're not just trying to, rip off the end consumer, right? I like this from Tops to an extent. I just hope they don't cull and kill essentially, the mom and pop local card store, because I think that could be quite detrimental, to the hobby long term. And that sort of goes on to the next point that Sports Collectors Daily also flagged via another set of T's and C's. Now, there are a lot more to talk to on this, but these are the 2 sets that I think are really worth talking to today. They're now also essentially saying that if you want to, again, buy Tops product from us, you need to essentially report to us on a quarterly basis. Now, again, these are things I've talked to in the past, and I think, this has come up, many, many months ago as a thing that could kill the local card store. But I just hope Tops, look after these older stores and do a few things. And just, if you haven't read on screen just yet, they're essentially saying on a quarterly basis, you need to report, lots of things to Tops, the sales and all that sort of stuff, interactions with customers online, your metrics when it comes to social media and all that sort of stuff, because it comes down to, number one, Tops wanting to have a better pulse of how things are essentially operating within the hobby, right? They want to have a better understanding as to, the success or the failure of certain product, right? They want to understand which stores are doing well for them and which stores are essentially letting them down. Now, the thing on this that I think has concerned a lot of people when it comes to, the local card store, the traditional card store that we want to try and protect that's located in a small town, as an example, is the one that's getting access, kids access to cards that they maybe wouldn't be able to get any other way, or, miss out on that experience interacting with stores. A lot of people have concerns that that's going to go away because of something like this. I really hope in this instance that Topps does something to protect those stores, okay? It might be quite difficult for some of these older stores to come up immediately and try and do this stuff. And it might be difficult for them to do it, over a 2 to 3 year period as well. I hope Topps offer them either, support through software that they can, register to or buy to, or even get access to, better POS systems or better reporting tools, right? I hope Topps tries to uplift these guys, right? They essentially walk hand in hand with them and do it as a team, as opposed to saying, well, you're not doing this, you're gone. That's not going to be good for the long-term hobby, right? That's going to be quite detrimental to a lot of markets out there, right? I know you might sit back and say, well, if you're in a small town and you don't have access to a card store anymore because Topps essentially killed them via no allocation, you can go online. But that is not a good position to take. Whilst it's quite fair if a store doesn't want to uplift and do the right thing, Topps have an obligation to try and bring them along the journey, right? Because Topps should be looking out, for the kids that would go into that store and get that exposure, get that experience. Because if kids, like I've said before, lose that opportunity to go in and smell what a card shop smells like, interact with the local card store, go there for a trade night, go there to hang out with their friends, go there and see somebody open a cool pack and get a cool card. Those are experiences, that stick with you for your life. And that's the thing that sort of sit back on and remember and make you passionate, right? It goes to the story of what it means to be a card collector. I really think Topps need to do whatever they can to ensure that is not lost, because something like this could result in people missing out on those experiences moving forward. It could result in certain card stores, losing allocation and therefore going bankrupt because they can no longer, get the cards they want, which means people aren't going to turn up. So I just hope they essentially take them on that journey and make it like a team effort rather than, you guys are out, you guys are in sort of thing. And the same thing goes when it comes to breaking and stuff like that. I really hope that Topps don't take a hard and fast rule with this. I'll bring it up on screen again. They're also mentioning that you can't do repacks and things like that without written permission. Like, I think that stuff is good. You need to, like I said a bit earlier, control that as much as possible. Make sure that there's not people in there getting access to things they shouldn't, doing things they shouldn't without consequence. That's a big problem in this hobby right now, and it has been for the last 2 to 3 years. It has been for longer, but it's been exacerbated in the last 2 to 3 years. So, I hope that was interesting. Please share your thoughts. If you think I missed anything, let me know, if anybody else has raised things since this video came out. You're not going to see this for 2 days after the news broke. So some of it might be a little bit outdated, but I think some of that conversation, is really important. This is not the end of the world, and this is also not the best possible outcome either. Topps have a really difficult thing here, and Fanatics have a really difficult thing here to try and, manage this perfectly, right? And it could go either way. They could stuff it up royally and essentially shit the bed, or they could do things so perfectly for the hobby off the back of this. They just want to, make sure they're putting things in place to hold people accountable, which I think is really freaking important. I'm sure there's more on this that I'm missing. I'm sure there's some things in here that, Fanatics and Topps are probably doing bad, and I'll probably talk to that at a later date if people can bring that to my attention. But just based on, what I've seen thus far, this is not incredibly alarming. I think it's to be expected, as we've discussed, many times on this channel. So I'm talking in circles now, as I always do. Thanks for watching, and I will, see you in the next one. Cheers.